Two German forces fought for Hitler during World War II: the Wehrmacht, heirs to the military tradition, and the SS, born from ideology and loyalty only to the Führer. They marched under the same flag, but did they see each other as equals or as bitter rivals inside Hitler's war machine? When Adolf Hitler rose to power in 1933, the German army was still bound by the traditions of the old Imperial and Reichswehr officer corps. It was a professional force, proud of its discipline, hierarchy, and apolitical stance. The SS, by contrast, had very different origins. Born in the 1920s as Hitler's small personal bodyguard, it grew under Heinrich Himmler into a political instrument, fanatically loyal to the Führer and steeped in Nazi ideology. From the beginning, many army officers regarded it as an outsider organization with no place in military affairs. Through the mid-1930s, friction between the two institutions deepened. While the army was still restricted by the Treaty of Versailles to just 100,000 men, the SS expanded quickly, forming its own military-style units such as the SS Verfügungstruppe, Special Purpose Troops. To officers trained in the General Staff tradition, these units were little more than party militias. Senior commanders like General Ludwig Beck, Chief of the General Staff, distrusted their political zeal and questioned their competence. They feared Hitler's reliance on Himmler's men would undermine the army's authority. The tension was not only about prestige, but also about power. Himmler's SS gained control over the Gestapo and the concentration camp system, creating an alternative power base that bypassed the military hierarchy. Wehrmacht leaders worried that the SS's growing influence threatened their monopoly over national defense. As early as 1944, during the Night of the Long Knives, the army had reluctantly supported Hitler's purge of the SA stormtroopers. In exchange, Hitler assured the generals that the Reichswehr would remain Germany's only military force. Yet within just a few years, he broke that promise by allowing the waffen-ss to expand. Tensions became visible during Germany's pre-war aggressions. In the 1938 Anschluss with Austria, Wehrmacht units and SS formations both took part. While the army carried out the main occupation, SS units staged flashy parades, claiming a share of the glory. Many officers grumbled that the SS was more interested in political theater than real soldiering. Similar frictions surfaced during the takeover of Czechoslovakia in 1939, where army officers criticized the SS for lack of discipline and professionalism. Still, cooperation was unavoidable. Hitler encouraged rivalry between his institutions, believing it kept both the army and the SS dependent on his favor. Some younger officers were drawn to the SS's bold image and rapid promotion opportunities. Others, however, clung to the traditions of the officer corps and resented the SS's intrusion. By the eve of war, the relationship could best be described as an uneasy alliance. The Wehrmacht still held the dominant position, but the SS was waiting in the wings, eager to prove itself on the battlefield. Historians still debate the true depth of the hostility. Some argue that the army's distrust was rooted in professional pride, a clash between soldiers and political fanatics. Others suggest the rivalry was less about morals and more about control. Who would shape Hitler's war machine? Either way, the stage was set for a volatile partnership once the fighting began. When Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, the uneasy relationship between the Wehrmacht and the SS entered a new phase. For the first time, army officers and SS formations operated side by side in large-scale combat. The Waffen-ss was still relatively small, about 18,000 men, but its presence was significant. On paper, these units were under army command. In practice, they often acted independently, guided by political loyalty to Hitler rather than military hierarchy. The campaign in Poland revealed sharp differences. Army commanders criticized SS units such as the Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler for indiscipline and reckless aggression. Reports noted high casualties due to poor tactics. More troubling were accounts of severe violence against civilians carried out by SS units and police formations. Some Wehrmacht officers lodged complaints, arguing that such actions damaged the army's reputation and undermined order in occupied territories. Yet Hitler and Himmler defended the SS, portraying them as uncompromising fighters in a total war. During the 1940 campaign in France, the Waffen-ss expanded its role. Divisions such as the Totenkopf and Das Reich fought in key operations. Their performance earned mixed reviews. On the one hand, their fanatical drive impressed some observers. They attacked aggressively and sometimes achieved breakthroughs where army units stalled. On the other hand, they often suffered disproportionately high casualties. Traditional officers complained that SS commanders valued ideological zeal over careful planning, turning their men into expendable shock troops. One notorious episode came during the fighting around La Paradise in May 1940, where soldiers of the SS Totenkopf executed captured British prisoners. While some Wehrmacht officers condemned the act privately, there was little appetite for open confrontation with Himmler's forces. To many in the army, the SS was becoming both an asset and a liability, useful in battle but dangerous to Germany's military honor. The rivalry was also fueled by resources. Waffen-SS units received priority access to new equipment despite the army's far greater size. This favoritism came directly from Hitler, who viewed the SS as his personal guard and political counterbalance to the traditional officer corps. Generals resented watching prized tanks and weapons diverted to formations they considered inexperienced. Complaints circulated in staff reports, though most officers remained cautious about voicing open dissent. Despite the tension, frontline soldiers sometimes developed grudging respect for the SS. They admired their courage under fire, their willingness to fight on despite heavy losses. Yet this respect was often coupled with frustration. To the professional army, the SS was reckless, unpolished, and dangerously political. What bound them together was not trust, but necessity. In Poland, in France, and soon in the Soviet Union, both forces fought for the same regime, and neither could afford to operate entirely without the other. Historians still question how deep the army's criticism ran. Was it rooted in genuine outrage at SS behavior or in jealousy over Hitler's favor? Some scholars argue the Wehrmacht complained more about discipline and resources than about atrocities. The truth, as the early campaigns showed, was a rivalry laced with cooperation, brothers in arms, but also competitors for power and prestige. The invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, Operation Barbarossa, brought the Wehrmacht and the SS closer than ever before. Millions of soldiers crossed into Soviet territory, including several Waffen-SS divisions. On the vast Eastern Front, the SS had its greatest opportunity to prove itself as a fighting force, and to some army officers, its reputation began to change. In the brutal early months, Waffen-SS formations such as the Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler and Totenkopf fought with striking determination. Their ferocity impressed some Wehrmacht commanders, who praised their willingness to hold ground or counterattack where others faltered. Yet this admiration came with sharp criticism. The SS divisions often suffered catastrophic losses because they favored aggression over caution. Army officers complained that their recklessness wasted lives and equipment. Still, Hitler's admiration meant the SS frequently received replacements and new tanks more quickly than regular army units. The Eastern Campaign also highlighted a deeper divide, one that went beyond tactics. Alongside combat troops, SS security forces and Einsatzgruppen followed the army's advance. Their mission was not just policing, but the systematic targeting of Jews, political commissars, and other groups. Wehrmacht officers could not avoid witnessing these actions. Some expressed unease, and in a few cases, commanders like Field Marshal Wilhelm Ritter von Lieb or General Johannes Blaskowitz protested, arguing that such atrocities harmed discipline and morale. But protests were rare, and most were ignored. Many officers tolerated or even cooperated with SS operations, rationalizing that it was not the army's task to intervene. Tensions arose when SS actions disrupted military priorities. For example, the army complained when SS mass reprisals against civilians fueled partisan resistance, forcing Wehrmacht units into costly anti-guerrilla campaigns. In several occupied areas, generals argued that stability required restraint, while SS leaders pursued terror as policy. These disagreements were less about morality than about military control. For the Wehrmacht, the SS's ideological warfare was often seen as interfering with practical strategy. Despite these conflicts, the Waffen-SS steadily gained prestige. New divisions like Viking and Das Reich expanded the force into a multinational army of volunteers and conscripts. Their performance in battles such as Kharkov in 1943 earned recognition even from skeptical army officers. To some, the SS had matured into elite troops. Others never accepted them as equals, dismissing their battlefield achievements as propaganda inflated by Hitler's favoritism. Historians still argue about how the Wehrmacht truly perceived the SS during this period. Some point to growing professional respect, forged in the hardships of the Eastern Front. Others stress that army officers continued to see the SS as reckless ideologues whose privileges came at the army's expense. What is certain is that the Eastern Front blurred the line between soldier and political warrior. Wehrmacht and SS fought side by side, often indistinguishable in combat, even as their roles in Atrocities drove a lasting wedge between myth and reality. By 1943, the rivalry between the Wehrmacht and the SS had taken on new dimensions. As Germany's fortunes on the battlefield declined, Hitler relied increasingly on the Waffen-SS. New divisions were raised, some from occupied Europe, and they were lavishly supplied. For army commanders struggling with shortages, the favoritism was glaring. Tanks and modern weapons that army divisions waited months to receive often went first to SS units. Many generals resented this, seeing it as political interference in military necessity. Yet in the field, the Waffen-SS did win respect in some circles. At battles such as Kharkov in 1943 and during the Normandy campaign in 1944, SS divisions fought with determination and skill. Some officers admitted grudging admiration for their toughness, particularly in defensive battles as the Reich crumbled. But this respect was never without reservation. Army veterans continued to complain that SS units wasted lives in reckless attacks and gained glory at the Army's expense. The Ardennes offensive in December 1944 deepened these impressions. Waffen-ss units like the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte spearheaded the assault, but their brutality against prisoners and civilians created lasting controversy. Some Wehrmacht officers viewed the Ardennes as the ultimate example of the SS's dual character, tactically daring but politically dangerous. By then, however, Germany's collapse overshadowed all rivalries. Army and SS formations were thrown together in desperate attempts to hold the front. As the Third Reich collapsed in spring 1945, differences sharpened again. Many Wehrmacht commanders looked on with bitterness as SS troops fanatically loyal to Hitler fought to the last in ruined cities like Berlin. Some army officers regarded this as reckless self-destruction. Others quietly admired the loyalty, even as they surrendered their own units. But one thing was clear: the rivalry had never been resolved. After the war, the divide widened in memory. At the Nuremberg trials, the SS was declared a criminal organization responsible for systematic atrocities. The Wehrmacht was not judged as a whole, though many of its leaders were tried individually. In the years that followed, surviving army generals tried to shape the narrative. In their memoirs, they painted the Wehrmacht as a clean, professional force, distinct from the SS. Crimes were blamed on Himmler's men, while the army claimed it had fought with honor. Historians today see this narrative as misleading. Documents show that the Wehrmacht was deeply complicit in atrocities, especially on the Eastern Front. Cooperation with the SS was far more extensive than post-war memoirs admitted. The rivalry was real, but it did not absolve the army of responsibility. Some scholars still ask, did the Wehrmacht despise the SS or did it envy them? The answer lies somewhere in between. The army distrusted their fanaticism, resented their privileges, but at times respected their fighting power. In the end, both institutions served Hitler and both helped carry out his war of conquest and destruction. The myth of the clean army set against the criminal SS remains one of the most enduring illusions of the post-war era. What history shows is that both institutions, Army and SS, served Hitler's war machine. Both bore responsibility for its crimes, even if it tried to shift the blame after 1945. The myth of a clean army facing a criminal SS has faded. What remains is the shared legacy of two forces bound by loyalty to the same cause. Like this video, subscribe and hit the bell for more History Inside, and we'll see you in the next one.